more handouts coming this way. Well, welcome everybody to Paxton School. And my name is Carol Bellin. I am a Paxton PTA member, and my son is here tonight in childcare, and he's in the 5th grade here at Paxton. And ever since he's come to school here, I've been involved with the PTA, and in particular have helped to fulfill one of the roles of PTA, which is to help parents become better advocates for children. And I have a strong interest in legislative issues, and I'm so relieved to see that there are people out there like myself that are really feel that it's important to address our legislature and participate in our democracy. And so I very much appreciate the fact that you've given your time to come here tonight. We will be having some introductions in just a little bit. I want to thank, first of all, the Paxton PTA and the organization WORD, Women's Opportunity and Resource Development, for co-sponsoring tonight's legislative advocacy training. I want to thank our principal, Roberta Stengel, here at Paxton School for all her help. And I want to thank our guest presenters tonight, who I'll introduce in just a minute. I guess what would be helpful is for us to review the agenda so you have an idea how the time's going to go. As have a few more. Come on in, have a seat, and here's some. If you would hand out the packets when people come in, please. And actually, well, our presenters tonight, I'll just introduce them. So Tammy Adams is here, and if you wouldn't mind helping me with writing up the agenda. And Dave Severson is here from the president of the Missoula Education Association, and Tom Facey, who is a teacher at Sentinel and has served 4 terms in the state legislature. And Tammy, the 4 of us will be the main presenters, but we hope tonight to make this, most of the meeting, as participatory as possible. We want to really hear from you and help you develop your message. So for tonight, what we thought is we would spend maybe 15 to 20 minutes in the beginning with a quick overview about lobbying and advocating for children. A little bit, you have handouts, so we're not going to go over word for word your handouts. You can take these home and read them, use them as a resource, but we will briefly cover the basics of how a bill becomes law, and have a little bit of a description about our current state legislative session. And Tom Facey, with his experience, will help us through that, so we can do that fairly quickly. But then I hope that you'll take advantage of Tom being here, and he's going to help us get some good ideas about how to communicate most effectively with legislators. I don't know how many of you have already been to Helena before. Can you raise your hand? So looks like most. So you know how hectic the legislative session is, and so it's important to have some tips as to how to get to your legislator so that you're not too frustrated. And then Dave Severson is going to give us a quick overview of some of the current bills that are being considered right now. And that will give us a bit of a narrowing of focus to some degree in terms of what bills really need some voices. But I don't want our evening tonight to be limited to that. I would really like to hear from you. The rest of the evening is going to be Tammy leading us in a discussion where hopefully we will hear from you what brought you here tonight, what your issues are, and perhaps we will find through our discussion tonight that we can identify some priorities that we would want to take as a message to Helena. I do want to announce that the Montana State PTA always has one day at the legislature, every time there's a legislative session, where members from across the state gather in Helena. And that day is next Tuesday. And I would very much like you to come to Helena. I've already registered to go to the day at the legislature, and there's a really exciting agenda that's been put together by our state legislative advocacy staff or volunteer that will include an address by Governor Schweitzer to the PTA members, an address by the superintendent of schools, Linda McCullough, the president, I believe, Eric Fever of the MEA MFT, the Federation of Teachers for the state. Eric Fever will speak to us. And Lance Melton, who's the executive director of the Montana School Boards Association. They will all address us. There'll be an opportunity to tour the Capitol. You'll get some more tips on how to talk to legislators, and then people will be sent out to talk to their legislators. And so I'm going up and would love to have people come in my car. Later on in the evening, I'll pass out some forms in case you'd like to register for that. Just to begin briefly, I'd like you to look at your handout, the first one. I think it's really important for people to understand. This is not exclusive to PTA, but it is sponsored by the PTA, and I hope many of you are members of the PTA. And one of the things that I've encountered with my interest in trying to work on legislative issues is very often I run into parents who say, PTA can't have anything to do with politics. And I just want to clarify that. That is not true. If you look at the mission statement of the PTA, the very first statement is to support and speak on behalf of children and youth in the schools, in the community, and before governmental bodies. So there is also I hope sometime at home you'll take a look at this article. This is maybe from a couple of years ago, the article, but I think it's a good descriptor of how important it is, as well as helping the teachers in the classroom and fundraising for our schools, that we actually speak out and advocate. Also on the yellow sheet, well, first there's why lobby, 10 reasons. I won't go over them and take your time. You can read those on your own. But my passion on this is that I really believe in a strong democracy. I feel like we're lucky here in Montana. We have a citizen legislature. Ordinary people like you and me are up in the legislature. We are able to influence them much more easily than, say, professional legislators. And so we should take advantage of that and participate and speak up. Personally, I feel very strongly about our resources, that we should prioritize education. And education is very much in need of voices. So take a look at home, why lobby, 10 reasons. And on the back, just for those who really don't believe me, this is the actual law about PTAs. Of course, you as an individual can always go and advocate, but you are even allowed as your school PTA. You can say you're from the PTA, where it says in the second paragraph, however, this does not mean that you must refrain from all political activities or from carrying on efforts concerned with legislative issues or official actions that threaten the well-being of children and youth. So you are allowed to go and specifically lobby for legislation as PTA. The one thing you cannot do is endorse political candidates, and you must be nonpartisan, but you can lobby. So I hope you will encourage more of that legislative activity. The PTA can provide you with what it takes to become a legislative chair at your school in the future. And so I think that's enough of my talking. I would like to introduce Tom Facey actually now. And as I said, Tom is a teacher, so certainly knows the needs of education, and is very experienced as a legislator. And he'll help us to go through some of how a bill becomes law.
Thanks for the break on saying I was experienced. To get a bill law, it's really pretty easy. You just have to get 77 people to agree to it. But the bad news is it's got to be the right 77. I always told people lobbyists were very helpful, whether you're a professional or an amateur lobbyist, because a lobbyist will tell you what a bill does. And it's my job as a legislator to ask the right questions. A good lobbyist will always, to be a lobbyist, you always have to tell the truth. That's all you gotta do, just tell the truth. It's my job to ask the question. Now, there's maybe two different types of bills or ideas you might think about. One would be what I'm going to call broad issues, which would be death penalty, abortion, school funding, taxes. And legislators probably aren't going to change their mind on those things because they sort of ran on those types of things. But I'll talk about that in a bit. There's also what I might call specific bills, and whether it's school bills or something that you're involved with at work or something you know about. Those, when you lobby on those bills, those you can be quite helpful there too. I was looking at Representative Razor's food bill, the lunch bill. That's a type of bill that if you had specific information about it, that you could write a lobbyist or a legislator, that would be super. Because you have some specific examples. First of all, brevity is really good. Brevity is great. Because these people are dealing with lots of pieces of paper, and if you can get your point across in 75 words or less, they're going to read that. They're not going to read a 3-page story about that. So brevity is up there in the list. Refer to the bill number, HB 285, but then tell them what it does, because there's there's over 1,000 bills, and to joke with each other, we'd have two of us, and we talk about, what about HB 289? Do you like this? And then someone would come up to us that we knew they'd say, what are you guys talking about? And we would play this trick on them saying, don't you know these bills? Don't you have the numbers memorized? They'd say, no, so either do we. We're just trying to freak you out. The point being is, if it's HB 200, House Bill 200, and you could say, provides money for school lunches. That'll just bring it into play a lot easier. If you've ever met the person, whether at the door or at a function, maybe mention that in your correspondence with that person, so they can put a face with the name, and that really helps a lot too. How many people here had a representative or a senator knock on their door in the last 2 or 3 years? Say where you live, the greenhouse on 42nd Street, or something like that. That will bring something to mind too. Work with friends. If it's, again, on a broad-based bill or whatever, or a specific bill, have your spouse or a friend call, because if you're doing it and if you can get 3 more people to do it, then that representative senator is going to get 4 messages instead of just 1. So it's going to be more important than that issue. Look at this bill that you've got in your packet right here. Bills are, I think, before I was in the legislature, I said, oh my God, I've never been to law school in my life, never spent a day there, How am I going to do this? Well, Montana law is really, I think, fairly straightforward. It's not magic. It's usually very plain English, and you can read a bill. And if it's one of those what I call, I'm calling specific bills, not the death penalty, abortion, taxes, or school funding, but it's a specific bill, it's okay to say, this is a great bill, maybe you want to tweak it this way, maybe you want to change it that way. And understand that there are no bills I ever voted for that I loved that were 100% perfect. So they're always open to some ideas about how to make a bill a little better. If you visited with a legislator maybe 2 or 3 years ago and you thought that person was unresponsive, try again, because legislators change. They literally look at things differently. So, try again. If you thought that person was not responsive, just try again and do that. Specifically with Montana legislature, 3 great ways to get a hold of them. One is through the phone. It's 444-4800. And that's not a free call. You have to pay for that. But the operator will ask your name and address and phone number. And once you do it once, you're in the database. And what's neat about that is you can say a short message to the operator. They'll type it down. And then that gets delivered to the legislator's desk in a nice bright yellow piece of paper every day. So it really makes, oh, I got some phone messages today. And the bright yellow piece of paper helps out. The other one is the state has a website where you can go in and do an email to a legislator through the state address. And I have never done that myself, but those, again, are one of those situations where they come to the legislator's desk, I think they're pink, and you go, oh, I got some emails today. And they're pink, and people like myself, I would keep these, I used to have them in my basement until a year ago, my wife told me to get rid of them.
I wanted to let people know, before the evening is over, we will be able to go across the hall into a classroom and go online to the state legislative website, and we'll be able to show you how to look up a bill on the internet and how to send a message.
Great. You know, I said if you met the person there at the door, and I'm not, there's not a quid pro quo here, but if you put a sign up for the legislator or something like that, let it remind them of that. I voted for you. Come on now. So you want to put it, I'll have to put a sign on it. Communicating with legislators who don't represent you. I would sort of stay in Missoula County. I think you can represent, you know, if you don't live in Lolo, but you can call Representative Nooney in Lolo. You might not live up the Rattlesnake, but you can contact Senators Williams or Representative Hamilton, who represent the Rattlesnake area. So I would not spend my time, you know, talking to a representative in Yellowstone County. You know why? They know you're not going to vote for them. A couple of things. The legislators will be back in town on March 1st. There's going to be there's going to be an event at the Children's Theater. This is during transmittal break. It is going to be a fundraiser for the Democratic Party, I think. But you can go down there and talk to them too. If you're ever in the hallways, one of the reasons I became a legislator is I got angry at Fred Van Valkenburg, our current county attorney, because I ran into him in the hall and I said, Fred, we need more money for schools. And he said, well, yeah, we'll see what we can do. And Fred walked away, and I was going, I just met Fred Van Valkenburg, a state senator. You know, I was sort of impressed with him. Not that I shouldn't have been, but the point is, it's easy to meet people in the hallway. It's easy to say, Representative Smith, this is Jones from Missoula. I don't live in your district, but you live right next to it. It would really be neat if. No, they'll listen to you. They're not going to be rude. The legislature in Montana works by committee. So we've got the Appropriations Committee, we've got the Judicial Committee, we've got Business and Labor. So the committee filters lots of bills, and the committee does lots of work for the whole legislature. When I was a freshman, I read every word of every bill of less than 10 pages because I had the time and I didn't know better and things like that. Later on in my fourth session, I would look at who sponsored the bill, I'd look at the title of the bill, and I'd look at the vote out of committee, and I sort of knew how I was going to vote on those big general bills, you know, the abortion taxes, death penalty taxes. But on those specific bills, if I got communications for someone, I would, oh yeah, okay, look it up, and oh, I see what they're talking about. And that was very helpful, you know, to get a form and idea. How am I doing for time? Okay. You know, I was thinking about what to say in terms of funding for schools and the like. And something that I sort of think schools are like the old frog put in a pot of hot water. You know the story, if you put a frog in the pot and then gently turned up the heat, the frog would boil to death and you wouldn't know he wasn't in good shape. I think that's what happen to schools. If you just say things like, you know, 5 years ago, we offered this many sections of foreign language in my middle school. Or we had some aids to help in the library, and now those things are gone. Those types of concrete examples, I think, are really beneficial. You know, rather than say, we just need more money. Well, everybody likes more money. But if you just said, you know, we used to have this, and now just a little while later we don't have that. I mean, you can go back 15 years, or anything you want to do. I just know when we look at what we have now and what we had 10 or 20 years ago, even Missoula County, we used to have more. That's what I mean by concrete examples. We used to have X number of sessions, or sections of English, or we used to have aids on the playground, those types of things. I know there's going to be a question and answer session a little later on. Did I say something that really triggered a question? Okay, well, thank you. Do one more quick thing. In Montana, a bill can only deal with one subject. In the U.S. House of Representatives, or Congress, U.S. state, you can have a bill that's going to deal with inspecting bananas. And you can put appropriation on there on rockets for Iraq. Okay? In Montana, you can't do that. This bill that Representative Razor has deals with improving access to healthy schools. That's all this bill can do. We can't slap something else into there, which makes things a lot easier in many ways in Montana. Feds just drive you nuts on that issue.
Well, thanks, Tom. And here's a question, Tom.
Yes.
Is there an optimal time in this, during this process to lobby a legislator on a particular item?
Well, it's so easy. It's really hard to have a bill to come along. I mean, I said that tongue in cheek. I think it's great to express your views any point in the game. Usually the earlier the better, because things start to get momentum. It all depends too if you want a bill to survive or you want to kill it. The good thing about killing a bill, you can do that. I don't know if this is, a bill goes and starts in one house, gets to that house, goes to the Senate, gets to the Senate. If the bill's been amended anywhere in between, then it goes through this process down here. And that's where it's pretty easy to kill bills, down here. There really isn't, again, it sort of depends if you're for or against it, when you want to get into it.
Well, I'm just going to add a couple of quick things before we move on and have Dave give us an update. I brought some resources that I hope you'll take a few minutes. Maybe we'll take a break since no one is enjoying any of the refreshments after Dave's presentation. And I did have this notebook that you can peruse. This is how I try and keep track of things. The first thing is, if you go to Helena at the Capitol, the first thing you want to get is one of these guides to the legislature. It has the contact information for every one. I'll pass these around, and it has their committee assignments, very important. This is where that handout came from. It's got a map in it, so you definitely want to get a hold of that. The other thing is, when you have an issue that concerns you, well, first of all, I want to say every bill starts with some citizen that gets a hold of a legislator and says, I want you to do this, and then the legislator is responsible for getting the bill writers to write up the bill. But it starts with the citizens, and that's how all of this gets into play. So I try to put together a notebook. You can flip through here. It has who's in the legislature, who's on what committees. It has a calendar, the projected calendar for what's going to happen in the legislature, so you can sort of see where we are. And the next really big event that's going to happen is the transmittal, or halftime, of the bills. And then what I would really encourage you to do is find other people who are interested, or find an organization that's interested in your issue, see if they have an email alert listserv. I can tell you I get like about 6 of them, and I put them in here for you. The ones that I don't agree with everything of every single one of them, but they encompass the issues that I'm most interested in. Dave's going to probably present the MEA MFT, and if you want to flip through this, usually once a week you get an update by email of what's happening. I mean, you can go online, like we will at the end. We'll go into the classroom and go online, and you can actually see where a bill is by looking at the state legislative website. But some of the ones for education that I keep track of are the MEA's listserv, the Montana Quality Education Coalition, which is the group of school districts around the state that had to sue to try and get the legislature to fund education adequately. And so they have a listserv. They're tracking education bills. The School Board Association has a website. Here in Missoula, we have, I think it's called the Steve Yakels. They have a children's agenda, 2007 children's agenda, that covers children's health issues in a very broad way, not just, certainly not education. I find that to be a really excellent email update, so you can keep track of those. And I put together, I'll leave these notebooks for you. The other organization here in Missoula that's really been helpful is Montana Women Vote. And I learned a lot. I went up on their Learn and Do Day, and they're having another one coming up in Helena. And so there's a notebook that has the women's agenda, and then they'll track what bills pertain to their particular agenda. So get yourself on a listserv, and if you want to be kept up to date, and then you'll know when it's time to contact people. When I went up to Helena with Montana Women Vote, I learned a lot. Not only speaking, always say to your legislator, if you are a constituent, right in the beginning, that, thank you for representing me, I'm your constituent, so they know that. But I also talked to people that didn't represent me, because one thing you can do is if your bill is stuck in a committee, you might ask your representative or your friend on that committee, who should I be talking to about this? And they may tell you someone that's not your representative. You want to try and find those key people that might be the swing votes, that might still be in a position to be influenced on it, and then see if you can find anything that you have some personal connection with, some relationship to start a conversation that they will really listen to you. So there are ways to find things that you have in common, even though you're not necessarily their constituent, that might influence their point of view. So I just wanted to let you know about those resources. And then finally, before we get to Dave, I do want to say that the Montana PTA has identified legislation as well, and I do have copies in this notebook of some of the full bills. The most important bill that's been identified by Montana PTA, I'm sure Dave will mention it, is full-time kindergarten. There's another one on seatbelts in buses. I put a copy of one of them in your folders. But in this book, you'll find the actual bills. But you can look them up at home and print them out at home for yourself. And I'll put these in the back. And now I'd like to thank Dave Severson for coming to give us a quick overview, and then we'll take a quick break and then start our real dialogue with you.
Okay, well, thank you. Let's start with passing this out. I'm Dave Severson, and I'm the president of the Missoula Education Association. This is the teachers union that represents all the teachers in the Missoula County Public School System. I've been doing this for 7 years now. It's pretty much a full-time job, but this year I'm also teaching some social studies at Sentinel High School. And previous to my presidential duties, I was an English teacher at Sentinel for many years. But I love this stuff, so this is probably way too much information. And I'm just going to go through it really quickly. You can read it later, but I'm just going to point out some trends, I guess. And you can take a look at it in a little bit. But this is really great. I mean, if you go in the information booth, because it has the pictures, you can track people down that you don't know. You can find them. I've been doing this kind of lobbying thing, amateur lobbyist, for 7 years now, and it's a lot of fun to go over to the legislature. You can feel like you're pretty involved, and you can have a big impact. Legislators sometimes don't listen to the lobbyists as much as they listen to just members of the public. You know, you're not professional lobbyists, but your voice, I think Tom would agree, carries a lot more weight than mine or the professional lobbyists that the union hires who work all the time in Helena. So let me go through this. As I printed out this list of, these are our priority bills that the union is following right now. Our professional lobbyists are looking at all these bills. Obviously, we would support something like Holly Razor's breakfast bill, but because there are some huge issues with attempts to destroy unions and school funding, which are big picture, we just don't have time to follow every single one. But obviously, we would, in the hall, say, yeah, this breakfast bill is a good thing, but it might not show up on this list, not because it's not important, it's just that the lobbyists just don't have the time to, especially this session, handle them all. There's a huge list. And as we go through the legislature, this list will get smaller and smaller and smaller because bills die. In fact, some of these on the list are already probably dead, some of the worst bills, so that's good. But there's so many of them. Let's see, you know, you don't even need to try and take notes. I'll just tell you which ones to star, which are the huge ones. But Senate Bill 16, I'll just start with the Senate bills, is the university system renewal of the 6 mil levy. That's pretty important, so I suppose put a star by that if you believe in funding the university system. It'll probably pass. I think this is a pretty much standard sort of thing. But does this, I don't know, I have to ask Tom, does this have to still go to a vote then?
Yes.
Even though, so.
Just to put on the ballot.
Yeah, so not only does this have to pass the legislature, then it goes to a vote of the people to reauthorize this tax that helps fund the university system. So that's pretty important, but I think that one will probably pass because it's a pretty routine thing. Senate Bill 23 has to do with some of the funding. You know, there was the lawsuit on school funding, and they reformulated how they paid schools. So they're paying schools not totally by a per pupil allotment, but now by a per teacher allotment. That's called the quality educator payment. And so this would fix a flaw. So it's important, but it's not a huge issue. Number 3, Senate Bill 56, is another correcting a mistake. These bills are so huge that little things sneak through that weren't intended. This has to do with retirement for teachers being paid for out of certain school budgets. So it's probably not anything that is going to be very interesting to you, but to the union, of course, it's a big issue because it costs school districts some money. On the next page, I'm going to go really fast here. Senate Bill 96 has to do with referendums and initiatives. You remember the referendum CI 97 that was struck down by the Supreme Court or in this last election. This change would restrict the way they collect signatures for that because they had some people hired from out of state to collect signatures for some of these initiatives. Let's get to some of the big bills here. The Senate Bill 123 is probably our one of our number one bills, the kindergarten bill, Linda McCullough's kindergarten bill. And I have another handout that explains that. So that's one I think we should all support 100%. And this has some talking points for why full-day kindergarten is so important for all schools. And I'll get to that in a minute. But that's Senate Bill 123. It passed the Senate, so it's already made it through part of the legislative process, but it's going to be a tough road in the House. I'll get to that in a minute. Senate Bill 152, so put a big star by Senate Bill 123, that's full-day kindergarten. Senate Bill 152 is another huge one. That's the governor's school funding bill. And that adjusts some funding, provides the finishing touches to the providing more money for schools that has been promised and is supposed to happen with this lawsuit. That one passed the Senate as well, but it's probably going to be amended. So this whole list may even change at a moment's notice, and all of a sudden, a bill that we considered a huge priority might have some amendments put on it that make it terrible, that we can't support. So that's why it's a good idea to follow the bills and through your PTA or through the MEA-MFT website, because all of this stuff can change at a moment's notice, and all of a sudden a bill that we were for this week might become poisoned and we're against it now. So, and that's hard to keep up with. In fact, some of these things have had hearings, and I don't have all the information on it because I'm trying to prepare to go to our legislative contact days, which are tomorrow and Saturday. So we're going to be doing the same thing you're going to be doing next Tuesday. A lot of union members from across the state are going to come and do this amateur lobbying of the legislature, and the legislators love that because they love to see real people come and talk to them rather than the usual lobbyists and talking to each other, I guess. So those are two really huge ones. I don't know that I need to really go through too many of the rest of them here, or I'm just going to go through fast. Number 7 is a technical union issue. Number 8 is an alternative high school that's in Dillon. Number 9 is funding for that high school. Number 10 is unemployment compensation for classified employees, people that are paraeducators, custodians, sometimes bus drivers who work 9 months maybe in a school, are technically unemployed, we think, during the summer. They can't apply for unemployment. This bill will probably not pass because I just don't think there's a frame of mind that a bus driver should get unemployment during the summer. But we'll still try and lobby for it as a union. Mm-hmm.
Are the bus drivers actually employed by the district, or is it the district has a contract with each transportation?
Yeah. Missoula has an unusual situation. We've contracted out our bus service a long time ago to Beach Transportation, but most of the schools in the state own their own buses and hire their own bus drivers. But say, for example, here in Missoula, so bus drivers don't count here in Missoula. I'm just talking for the whole state union. Missoula is one of the few that has that situation. But school lunch people, anybody that works 9 months, there's basically no money coming in during the summer, and that's kind of hard to deal with. But again, this is probably a dead bill. It's just something we bring back every year, and I just don't know that it's going to pass. It would be great if it did. But on the next page, the number 11 is a real important one, put a star by the Indian Ed for All, increase funding. And I don't know if there was something about this that I didn't have time to read, frankly. It was in committee. Did that get killed in committee? Or
People, I haven't had a chance to read it either, but I brought 3 copies for people, anybody particularly interested. I think we really need to, let's see, it says on Thursday, a joint appropriations subcommittee slashed the OPI budget by 40%, including most of the Indian Ed for All money. We have to put it back. Contact members of the House Appropriations Committee and ask them to restore the $5.8 million cuts from the OPI budget. There's talking points and contact, so if you'd like to advocate for keeping funding to Indian Education for All, I have a few copies of this. And I also want to say, if there's anything here that you hear about that you want a copy of, let me know. We'll write it down. If you have email, virtually all of this is transmitted electronically. I can email it to you tomorrow, okay?
And I can do the same thing too, and you can find a lot of this stuff on the MEA website. Now, the way that story was phrased, I don't know if they were talking about this particular bill.
That's different.
That's different.
The
It
one
was,
Harold's talking about is different. That was last Thursday.
yeah, and that was probably inside of
Right, the bundle.
the big bundle of other monies.
Yeah.
And there might be a tactic there. They may have killed the money out of there because they want to pass this particular bill. Sometimes these things work in tandem, that there's 2 bills that do the same thing introduced by different legislators, and they may kill one because they like the other one. So not always will a legislator be opposed to something. If they vote against a certain bill, they might say, this other bill's better. You know, some legislators might say, I pulled the money out of, Indian Ed money out of Superintendent McCullough's OPI bill because we're going to pass this one. You know, so you might get that as an explanation from legislators occasionally. Hopefully they're telling you the truth. In the House, now here's the pattern I wanted to show you. A lot of stuff is passed out of the Senate already because there are some folks there who are supportive of education. But everything's got past the House too before it becomes a law. That's what makes it so difficult. And the House bills, there's a lot of House bills that we don't like. One we do like is this House Bill 13. It's the state university pay plan. So people who work for the state of Montana, many of them are also represented by our teachers union. It's kind of weird. And the university workers are represented by the teachers union and some of the professors and folks like that. So this is very important. It's a negotiated contract with these state and university employees, and so this is huge. This must be done. Otherwise, you know, there could be, I suppose, ultimately a state strike of university and state employees, because this is the final piece to their negotiated agreement. So this is a big, important bill for the union. May not have too much bearing on, you know, public education, K-12 public education. But it's one of our important issues because it affects a lot of our members. As does House Bill 63, the teachers' retirement system, you've probably heard, is kind of on shaky footing. This would fund some more, put some more money into that. It's huge for us. You need a sound teachers' retirement funding for the teachers' retirement. Let's skip House Bill 95. It has to do with optional retirement plans for university employees. Number 4, House Bill 159, the public employees retirement system needs some money too, and those are people who are members, but they primarily are not in the schools, the K-12 public schools. But it's important to us as a union. Representative Feary is a legislator here in Missoula, represents Milltown, Bonner area. And he's introduced House Bill 135, which would improve funding for busing. And so that's important to him, probably is important to Bonner as a community, or Missoula maybe. I haven't followed this one too well, but he's a Missoula legislator. House Bill 152 on the next page is Superintendent McCullough's school funding bill. This is a huge one, but it's already been tabled in House Education on February 1st, I see, so it's probably dead. I don't know. Tom, maybe you can help me with this. What do you think?
Yeah, I think there's several funding bills for it, K-12, and they'll probably use similar mechanisms.
The governor's bill, which I mentioned already, is a huge one. So a lot of the stuff that's in the governor's school funding bill was similar to what was in this bill. So they've already killed one of the school funding bills. And so all that's left is the governor's, maybe some others. Sometimes they can jury-rig things together and put something into a bill that had nothing to do with school funding at the last minute as a compromise. Let's see, bills we oppose. I'm just going fast here because I think my time's almost up. But there are some folks in the House in particular and the Senate who are pretty anti-education, and some of these bills reflect that. So we would be against, or we're against the Senate Bill 219, a state employee doesn't receive severance pay. I'm not going to talk about all these. Senate Bill 232, changing political party affiliation. This is directly related to Sam Kitzenberg switching from the Republican Party to Democratic Party, because some people in the Senate didn't like that, I guess. But he's voted with the Democrats for many years on quite a few issues, and some people are sore about that, I guess. So, but that was tabled, so that one might be dead. Right to work, which really isn't to the unions. It's not a right to work. It has to do with prohibiting people from joining unions in kind of subtle ways, and letting people kind of freeloader off of the collective bargaining, the benefits that we bargain for everybody without paying any fee for the representation. That one died. but that was a bad bill. The next one was an insurance bill. I'm going to skip. Next one would have limited the power of the Board of Regents that controls the university system. Next one would have limited the power of the Board of Public Education, which controls K-12 schools. Those were tabled, and I'm going to skip down to the House bills because one of them, House Bill 164, would allow anybody to teach, pretty much, any volunteer to teach. That one was killed. But another one that comes up on the back page, the last page, House Bill 230 passed out of committee. It authorizes a school district to alternatively license teachers. Well, that sounds kind of harmless. Well, what would that mean? It could mean that somebody in Victor who just wants to volunteer to teach could walk into schools and say, I think I can teach. I don't have a college degree. I don't have any experience dealing with kids, but I can teach. And the small town who might be short of teachers might say, okay, we'll let you teach. And I think that'd be really dangerous to the teaching profession. That one passed, and there's a lot of these other bad bills, more right-to-work bills, bills from Representative Jor, who's the Constitutional Party guy, that would, number 7, that would abolish mandatory school enrollment and permit students to not attend classes. So can you imagine what that could do? The last one, intellectual diversity. It's not about intellectual diversity, it's about forcing a ultra-conservative curriculum on schools. I mean, these are just some examples of the stuff that's going around in the House right now. So who knows what this list will look like in a couple of weeks, but probably more importantly, I know you're interested in full-day kindergarten. Here's some pages from our last newsletter, the MEA MFT Today, and these articles talk about full-day kindergarten on the first page, why we believe this is such an important thing educationally, and it should be funded, and I think Missoula can do it fairly easily, and it would be extremely beneficial to students. The second page talks more about full-day kindergarten and talking points, so if you wanted to lobby for that issue, there's a couple of bills that deal with full-day kindergarten. These are some things you could say to the legislators. Just, feel free to use these words right here. Just memorize one of these talking points. The third page are your legislative team, our top bills, kind of summarizes in a little more layman's language, I suppose, some of the important bills that I just went through in a little shorter fashion. And the next page talks about that too. But again, this gets out of date pretty quickly. And this little, on the last page, this little box here, please use our website. It's not exclusive for union members. We would like everyone, community members, PTA people, to go to mea-mft.org. It's right at the bottom in this little gray box here on the back, /legislate, LEGIS, HTML. And it gives you a gateway to all of these things that you're going to see on the computer. It tells you our position on things, so if stuff changes, you'll find out that a certain bill is not something. The phone numbers are there that they were talking about where you can leave a message. The address if you want to write letters right now, and some tips on what to include when you do that. But I use the email. I'm always sending little emails to my legislative contact saying, just simple, vote for the kindergarten bill, vote for this bill. We dislike this bill. Just simple. You're limited to a certain number of words in the email, but I've also done the phone messages too. And I think some legislators, if they're in a floor debate, might use those for a little bit of theater. If they have 50 messages from my constituents back home, look at this, this is an important bill. I've seen them do that. So the more messages that you can network and spread on your issue, the better. And I'll try and hang around as long as I can to answer questions too. Sorry, I just love this stuff. I'm just kind of long-winded about bills that are probably, like I said, way more information than you ever needed to know.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Well, we have a little over an hour. I'm anxious to hear from you, and I'm going to let Tammy Adams take over our final hour, but just modifying the agenda. I just don't want anyone to forget, in case anybody had to go. I don't want anybody to forget. I think after we have our discussion, if we can just reserve a few minutes to go over to the classroom. I think, how many of you already get online to the legislative site? Well, maybe half, so, perhaps half of you will want to join us for a few minutes and just see what that looks like. I love it. Once I found it, I go there all the time.
Carol?
Yes.
You can look up bills there too. I mean,
Yeah.
you can print out your own version of the bill and what it looks like right now, compare it to what you think, read it, start to learn about the stuff. It's just really cool.
And the last resource that I want to mention, and I don't know how many of you watch the Legislative Digest on PBS that comes on Friday nights, and they rebroadcast it 2 o'clock on Sundays, but I have taped that because it is a really good digest of what went on that week. And I don't want to play video for you tonight, but I want you to know if anybody wants to borrow it. There was one section, it was in the first week, that I have queued up if anybody after or whatever wants to see it, but it is a legal primer that was given by the Greg Pettish, who's the head of the legal services for the House, and he gave kind of a legal workshop to the Education Committee and in the first days of the legislature. And it's about 10 minutes on which they put in this Legislative Digest, and it outlines the background for those of you who might be a little confused about, say, the lawsuits, the Quality Education Coalition, the context of the special legislative session to fund education that we had before. So I want to introduce Tammy Adams and from Word, who's a family advocate, and she's going to help us engage in discussion. And Tammy, we didn't talk enough ahead of time about how we want to start this, but and I don't know if people would like to take a break. I will just say there are some restrooms there, and there's decaf coffee and tea, and please get up at any time and help yourself. I don't know if you want to have people introduce themselves, or if you want to give them a question.
How about if we go ahead and take a break, just a 5-minute break, bathroom break, and if you want something back here, go ahead and get something. Because I will be having you stand up. We're going to, Mr. Facey talked about how it's important to kind of have your what you want to say to the legislators very succinct, either verbally, if you're going to go to Helena next week, or in an email. So that's what we're going to practice when we come back, okay?
Could we just hear people's names? I actually failed to announce that we actually have a visitor from the state PTA who's come. Could we just quickly say where we're from, and we'll get into what our issues are when we come back from the break. And I also want to mention, I failed to mention to you, I appreciate the fact that you're all willing to now be videotaped. This is Ron from MCAT, Missoula Community Access Television, and we have a government TV channel now exclusively for government matters, and they wanted to put this on as an educational program on the government channel. So I apologize for not mentioning who was here videotaping it. It's for cable TV. So could we start with some quick introductions and then have a break? Or Dee, please.
That's okay. I was just going to say, I'm Dee McClain, and I serve on the Montana State PTA Board, and we're really glad to see so many people coming out and wanting to be advocates for children. So thank you for coming, and thank you, Carol, for putting this on. This is wonderful.
Good evening. My name is Linda Butler. I'm a teacher and I'm also a lawyer. I went to law school 15 years ago with the idea of expanding my passion of advocating for children. So that's why I'm here.
And
Paxton. I'm just accompanying my granddaughter who's doing this for a school project.
I'm Michelle Lloyd. It's a school project.
Carla Renault, parent of school children.
I'm Rebecca Powers. I'm a university student. I'm also a mother of 2 Missoula County Public School children. And I'm here because I'm really interested in Indian Ed for All dollars and how they're spent and what's going on in the legislature.
I'm Joanna Smetanka, and I'm a parent. What's my name?
I'm Alicia Goheen-Yanada, and I'm program coordinator for Montana Women Vote. And I was just interested in coming here and hearing more about education.
I'm Andrea Struzich, and I'm a parent of some children in the rattlesnake area.
Christina Delmore, and I've got a little boy in school and a little girl soon to be in school, so I just want to be as involved as possible.
I'm Marie Porter. I have 2 sons at Rattlesnake Elementary School.
I'm Vicki Russell, and I have 1 son at Rattlesnake and another son to be in Rattlesnake. And what interested me was I went to a lunch seminar, was it 2 weeks ago? And just had my eyes open to some issues that I realized that I need to start getting involved, even though I have young school children.
I'm Sarah Conkle, and I have a son at Rattlesnake Elementary School also, and one which is going to be in elementary school in a couple years.
My name is Rebecca Grimm. I have a son that goes to Dismit Elementary School. I am also a student in the social work school at the University of Montana. And I'm interested in understanding bills and just think that it's my duty to figure out how this works.
Welcome to Paxton. I'm Roberta Stengel. I'm the principal here, so I'm an MCPS employee. I'm a parent also, but my daughter is done with public school and is in college, so I'm here just to help Carol with the program and help all of us do a better job of advocating for our kids.
So if we take a few minutes, please don't leave. This is the best part, is when we're going to be talking with you. But if anybody does have to go, make sure, I really want people to come with me to Helena on Tuesday. If anybody would like to join me, we can carpool. I'm also going again next Friday when they're going to be hearing the Representative Holly Racer's school nutrition bill to get some extra money to improve our school food. So if that's a better day for someone to go up. Gosh, I don't know, well, I'll leave my contact information as well, but please, let's try and, in this next hour, get to know each other and support each other, and maybe we can go up, if Tuesday's not the best day, some other day, and go up together. So just have a couple of minutes to get some refreshments.
So again, I wanted to reiterate what Tom Pacey said, and also Carol. It's really important when you're talking to your legislators that you know the House bill, and again, maybe the title of it. I did go with Alicia with Montana Women's Vote last Friday. We got to go to Helena. I did talk to a legislator. They were just about ready to go into session, and we had somebody ask her to come out and talk to us. We said we were her constituents, and could you please just come out and talk to us for a few minutes? It was probably 10 minutes to 1. They convened at 1 o'clock, and she came out. So again, they are willing to talk to you, and they do want to hear what you have to say. And again, one of the questions we said, we wanted to know, it was a particular bill where life begins at conception, and we just wanted to pick her brain on whether she thought it was in the House committee. That definitely passed the House and was going on to the Senate. So who else did we need to contact around that particular bill? Tonight we're going to focus on some of the education bills. So we're going to play a game to get you used to talking. And again, we want to be as succinct as we can be. What are you going to say to your legislatures? Either verbally, if you get to go to Helena, over the phone, if you leave them a voicemail message, or through email. And this is a game called Agree, Disagree, and Unsure. And we live in a great country where we can have different opinions. So it's really important. Sometimes we get into a meeting and we think we're all thinking alike. and we all do have different opinions. So this is a time where we get to listen to each other with dignity and respect. And again, formulate your message. What is your message going to be? So if you agree with the bill that I mentioned, I'm going to have you come over to this side of the room. If you're not sure, if you're kind of waffling, there's reasons why you might agree or reasons why you disagree, you're in the middle. And then if you disagree with the bill, you don't think it's a good bill, I want you on this side of the room. Okay? So again, this is where dignity and respect comes in. This is a time to listen to each other and see if you can change each other's minds. Okay? So let's start with that Senate Bill 390, which is increasing funding for the Indian education for all. I want you guys to go ahead and stand up. If you agree that we should increase that education money for Indian education for all, you're on this side of the room. If you're not sure, because you're not even sure what it says in the bill, I want you in the middle. And if you disagree, no, we don't need an increase in Indian education funding, you're over on this side of the room. Okay? And this is a hard one, because you have to decide on your own. You can't watch the rest of the group. Okay? And you're not actually talking to me, but you're going to talk to these folks in the middle. Okay? Because they're not sure why we should increase Indian education funding for all. Okay? So would someone like to take the lead? Why do we need to increase Indian education funding for all? Don't they have enough money?
I think we need to increase Indian education for all because what they appropriated at the special 2005 legislative session was only $20 per child. And that doesn't go far when paying for materials and supplies and bringing speakers in and things like that. So that's a big reason.
Okay. And how come you guys are unsure? What?
I don't know enough about it.
You don't know enough about it? Okay.
Really.
Okay. And how about, can you take her word that there's just not enough funding?
I don't know.
No? Okay, somebody else then. They can't take her word. Go ahead, sir.
I think Indian education for all is important because a lot of white people in Montana don't understand Indian issues, and Indian education for all is designed to bring us all together and educate us about our neighbors and some of the first peoples who were in Montana. And there needs to be some money to do that because it's been ignored for so long. It's kind of a issue of accidental prejudice. I mean, I grew up in Missoula as a white city kid. I don't know much about Indian tribes or the first peoples that were here. I'd like to know more, and that's what the money could help with.
Could that be a point? What do you guys think?
Good point. I think without anybody in disagreement, it'd be tough, and without hearing any sort of
Right.
Yeah, I would
I
just
don't know
need
what
an
might
opposite. Yeah.
suffer, where that money's
Right.
coming from, anything
Okay.
like that.
Anybody want to answer? Because this is what you're going to
What's
talk to.
the
You're
other-
going to talk to legislators who are on the fence.
Right.
Okay? And so how are you going to convince them that you guys are right? So I
What's
need
the
some more
opposing
people.
position?
Yeah.
What's the issues that people would be opposing?
What do you guys think? What
We
would be
don't
the
have
opposition?
money for Italian education for all.
Okay.
We're not funding
They
that.
are Italian, I
I also think some of the opposition is there's a contingent of people that think that the folks who do deliver the education have enough money right now. And if you just go back to your own house and reshuffle your budget, then you can address these things. And I think that's a lot of what comes from the opposition. Sometimes when I hear what's being said, it's not necessarily that they're disagreeing with the two ideas that you heard here, but it comes down to the financial piece. And the thought is, you already have enough money. But, you know, we say, hey, this is new. It takes reworking some things that we have. It takes materials that we do not have right now that we need to either create or find that are out there. Because it is for all. There's a misconception about that also. The intent is for all of us, to all become better at understanding how it is we got to this point in our state.
The legislator, will come out. When you're in the legislature, the Constitution is what the document that rules you. The Constitution of Montana says that we will preserve the heritage of the Montana tribes. So as a school teacher, we have been working on science curriculums for over 100 years, English curriculum for over 100 years. So now we have this obligation to preserve the heritage of Montana tribes, and it's going to take several decades to get that job done adequately. What do we, and because we're sort of new at this, we're throwing a lot of information at our students, our kids, in a very haphazard fashion, i.e. Some of our kids already know the 7 tribes and 7 Indian reservations in Montana and the 13 to 15 tribes that live on those reservations, and trying to get some benchmarks of what should a 4th grader know, what should an 8th grader know, what should a 10th grader know. So it's just going to take time to develop those programs so teachers know what to do. And then the other hard part about it is, because we don't have a class, and I don't think we should have a class on Montana Indian heritage, we want this information to be integrated through our kindergarten through high school government classes. So how do we do that? How do we do it adequately? How do we do it so it makes sense and things like that? So we address age-appropriate issues at certain times. So that's why I'm advocating for it, because the Constitution says we have to do it. As teachers, when we get our license, we click on a little thing on the computer saying we'll support the Constitution. So it's not a matter of if we want to. When I get my license, I said I'm going to do that. So, and I can understand the people that are against the issue because of what Roberta said. The perception that we've got enough money just to rearrange the budget, but this really is a big deal in terms of the job we have to do, and just trying to get it done correctly for the first generation of 2.
Okay, so did that help? So I'm just going to paraphrase very loosely what the both of you said, is that in order to integrate it throughout the curriculum, K through 12, they need more funding and they need more time to educate the teachers who are then going to teach this to the students. What do you guys think on that? And you don't have to change your mind, but it's just about, because again, a lot of your legislators that you're going to talk to are going to be on the fence. What are you going to say to sway them to your way of thinking?
I think their points are all really persuasive. It's my own ignorance about the bill, because what I don't know is, does that mean, where is that money going to come from? Does that mean we're going to have fewer teachers? Are we not going to have art? Because we're going to sway that money? I mean, I personally think education is horribly underfunded in all kinds of areas. So,
right.
Is it within this education, pool that's going to be moved over to fund this, or is there going to be additional money in education?
What bill are you talking about?
The one that we mentioned earlier tonight.
The one where they're all bundled together?
Yeah.
Yeah, the one that she's talking about is a lot of those things are bundled together. And I was over there last week, and the concern from the folks that are against those bills are that they don't like them bundled together, and they want them pulled apart because there's different pieces that they don't like. And so, what you said is exactly true. I would guess that most of us in the room right now think there's a shortage of money, and what are we going to? What's the best case scenario? Yeah.
Right. Thank you. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one. How about Senate Bill 123, which is asking for full-day kindergarten? Do you agree with that, full-day kindergarten? You're not sure, you're in the middle, and you disagree. You think that half-day is enough for students. What do you guys think? Okay. So we saw just a little bit of movement. Okay. Can I start with you? How come you disagree?
Well, I haven't read the pamphlet I got tonight, but I felt like when my son started kindergarten, he was really worn out for half a day.
Okay.
Just mentally, it was a lot more work for him. He put a lot into it. And it took him a while to adjust to that. But to put somebody in full-time, it just seems like to me, but I haven't read the pamphlet, I haven't read a lot of somebody else's study on it. But me personally, that's how I saw it.
Okay. So can I have somebody
So it makes me
respond
nervous.
over here? Because she's concerned about her child being worn out. Go ahead.
I can understand that. There's that concern. I have that concern about my own daughter. We I've noticed teachers who've taught both full day and half day kindergarten. And I think some of what's going on with what your child experienced is the fact that teachers are overachievers. They're trying to get all this curriculum crammed into those kids and to give them all of the stuff that they need to get them ready to be in school and learn to read and all those other things and learn math. In a half day is taxing on a kid. But kindergarten teachers also recognize that kids need play, kids need some downtime, the cookie and nap time and things like that. So if you can have a full day to deliver that with some gaps and some fun times, I think it would be more effective. And kids are
I'm
natural.
for the nap time, I'm for the fun time, and I don't think the teacher needs to give it to them so much as just a bit of curriculum to teach them to be in the first grade. I know a lot of parents need to apply more, and we're so overworked anyway in a double income society, you can't work with your kids like you should. But I don't think having the teacher do my job at that age is going to help them learn faster. I think getting the parents to work with them for half the day is going to help more.
Thank you. I think, as far as the full day kindergarten, the reason that I'm for it is, and I recognize the fact that not all children really can adapt to a full day. But in the long term, when you're talking about how we really make it in this world, we're talking about our social skills and how we interact in our community. And I think that kindergarten is a really great place to establish that foundation. And so it's really not all about the academic or adding more academic to the full day kindergarten, but simply supplementing it with some additional components that we really aren't able to shove in a 2-hour time frame. And I see it as, across the board, I see it as accountability for a student to be able to understand the social components of just friendships, playground activities, snack time, the manners thing, all those things that you just can't shove in a 2.5-hour period of time. And I think that if you spread that out over a full day, by the time a child does go to the first grade, there's a pretty strong foundation there for a lot of things to be successful. So it isn't just about academics, in my opinion.
We got a couple more time and then Alicia.
I would say that if you look at the language of the bill, Montana is a very strong local control state. The bill says that the state will fund this if the local district wants to do it. And I believe that the local district would have the option of only having half-day kindergarten, that students would not have to go to full-day kindergarten. So it might not be in a school in your neighborhood, you might have to do some carpooling to the school across town. That's something that the Montana schools and our law is very strong about, is having local control. So this doesn't mandate that you offer all-day kindergarten. It just says the state will pay for it if the local folks want to do it.
I have a question of clarification, because when I had understood the bill, and I don't track all the education bills on a regular basis, but would there be options for parents to choose between having their kid in full-day and half-day kindergarten? That was my understanding of the bill. So I think there are parents who, if parents do have the ability to spend their afternoon with their kids, that might be a really great choice for their family. But I worked with Early Head Start as a low-income family advocate, and there's a lot of families who don't have that option. And some of this childcare in even this community is very shocking, I would say. And so to have there are some really great childcares out there as well, but to have an option for every child to be in a safe educational environment for the whole day, should the parent choose that, should that be the best option for that family? Seems like a good option to me. Although, if you have,
it's either way though.
that was my understanding of the bill. Is that there would be not mandatory full day attendance, so a family could decide what was the best fit for their family. And I know a lot of moms who are working who, it's 11 o'clock and you're covering the front desk of some office. It's really difficult to figure out the plan for how you're going to get your kid from even childcare, from kindergarten childcare, vice versa. So I think that's where I saw that this bill might have a real help for families and working families especially.
I'm waving off because I agree with you. That's what my point was. Okay.
Kindergarten is not mandatory right now. Nobody has to go to kindergarten right now if they don't want to. It would be the same thing.
I'd just like to share perhaps the flip side of the coin for my experience with my child. And what my child had difficulty with half-day kindergarten because he was forced to do so many transitions in that short period of time. Like as Dave said, the teacher wants to try and get a lot in, but even just in the wintertime, having to stop doing what they're doing to get their coat on because they only have, a few minutes and then go outside. And the frequency of transitions with half-day kindergarten was difficult. So to have a more relaxed day, to have more time to do each activity without having to say, oh, hurry up, for the bus comes to take you home. So that was a personal experience.
And how about you folks in the middle? Did you want to say anything, ask any clarifying
I
questions?
guess there's just lots of good points that I thought about. I had we've had a son in all-day kindergarten at St. Joe's and then have moved up to the Rattlesnake, so I've experienced full-day kindergarten, and I have a son in half-day kindergarten at Rattlesnake right now, so I have a sense a little bit of both of them, and lots of the things you guys talk about have been my experience, which is right now I see one of my sons that's being kind of pushed along a little bit. The other one really tired when he was there all day and those sorts of things. So I think that there's a lot of those sorts of things I think ring true for me. I think the thing that I feel strongly about, I'm fortunate to be home the majority of the time. I work part-time for the school district actually, but I guess I don't know if there's any real sort of, you talk about this whole socialization and that sort of thing with kids, and I think kids have soccer and kinder music and all that sort of thing, so I think they get socialization and other sorts of things. And I guess my thought is for myself, I'm wondering about, I love that they come home and they're just 5 and 6 and they will be out and they'll be gone soon enough. And I'm not sure if another half a day for a year is going to make that much difference in the long run. And so I know there's studies, and that's what I'd be more concerned about, is sort of I'm not opposed to it. I guess I don't have any real sort of, I think that when kids are ready to learn, especially, the age range, when lots of kids are going into kindergarten at 6, some are going in at 5. So the range of learning ability and the range of kids, their readiness for learning is really different and really varied. So I don't really sort of espouse the fact that they have to go right now. I think it's okay that they would be home. Again, that's my option, to be home with them. So I understand that there's lots of parents that don't have that option, and daycare and money to get kids and all that sort of stuff. So.
Thank you.
I don't really agree or disagree with it. I think that there's good points to both of it. I believe that there are some children who are probably ready or okay to go to school or go to kindergarten full day, but I believe that there are probably some that aren't ready to go to kindergarten full day. And I guess the other thing I was also concerned about is I realize that some of the schools just don't have room to have all-day kindergarten. So what are they going to do to, how are they going to compensate for not having enough classrooms in certain schools?
Okay.
For all-day kindergarten.
Did you want to say anything? Okay. So thank you very much. Can anybody over here respond to, do you know about the studies? Does full-day kindergarten improve?
I've also heard about a study that I spoke with some kindergarten teachers who had said that they read some studies. I didn't read it yet, but they said that it didn't seem as though at that age that going to school all day made a difference for 5 and 6-year-old children. So.
Okay.
The studies that have been done make a difference for kids in lower socioeconomic areas. And if you think about that, they have less exposure to text, less exposure to magazines. So they come to school with fewer words, their vocabulary is limited. So the studies show those kids reap huge benefits from full-day kindergarten.
one of the studies that I've read is just, my background is early childhood and I work with little ones, but by the time they hit 6 and they're in a low literacy environment, there can be up to almost like 1,500 words difference.
What if they're in an average environment? What if they're in an average or, stimulation?
The studies
and that sort of
really
stuff?
show that it's not that big of an impact when you're in an environment that's rich in literacy.
Okay.
When you're not, it makes a huge difference.
Which makes sense.
So thank you.
Oh,
And as far as the funding thing, one of the bills does provide some $10 million in one-time monies for schools to add on to their buildings, to build the new classrooms they need, buy the furniture, stuff like that.
Well, one of the things that I think about is we have a Rattlesnake, we have they're trying to consolidate, take a teacher out of the 3rd grade and put 2 and then, so it's like, how does that work that you take one out and then you put more in? So I don't understand, you know what I'm saying? There's all this sort of stuff there. It doesn't, so early education is important, but once they get to 3rd grade or 4th grade, it's not as important or?
Right.
So that's confusing for me, I guess.
Go ahead.
That's something you could take to your local school board because they make those decisions, and you can go to the meetings and talk to them about that because they'll have meetings that decide on how many teachers they're going to hire for the biennium and who's retiring, if they're going to hire more teachers to fill their place, etc. So you can go to your local school board to Missoula County Public Schools and talk about it.
So does that funding that would be in that bill help schools get more kindergarten teachers?
It can.
Is that increase? Is that what it's meant for?
There's funding attached to the kindergarten bill.
Right.
Without the funding, there's not going to be any place that can afford to do kindergarten.
And that's a good point too. Look at your bills and is funding attached or not attached to. So
And there's a
that's good piece
PTA at Rattlesnake, so if those parents are concerned, talk to them about it, and they can come to a school board meeting and share their concerns too.
Can I
Yes,
just
please
follow
do.
up on this? And I know this is digressing because we're not
That's
talking about
okay.
specific legislation, but when we're talking about influencing on a more local level, we're lobbying on a more local level. And this issue of funding keeps coming up, and I can say as a parent who's been in to see principals, who's been in to see, the superintendent, who so many times, we lay out, here's a concern of mine, here's why, here's all this research, here's this, that, and everybody says, we love kids, we're glad you care about the kids, we know what's optimal for education, but here's what our funding is. Here's what we're allowed to do by accreditation standards. And, but thanks for your time. And I find it frustrating, personally. I think I've got a principal right in-house so I can pick on. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, what I want to ask is, how much influence over those types of decisions within a particular school or district do you have as a principal? Does the school board have? Because the answers that come back often are, our hands are tied because of funding, accreditation allows this.
Okay.
Well, it's just like the budget that you do at home. There's a finite source of money, and you have to decide how you're going to spend it. And yet, you have the accreditation standards. So, as kids get older, you can have more kids in a classroom. And there isn't any additional funding given to you to have fewer kids in the classroom. So if you want to continue to keep other programs, it's like something's got to give. And I don't remember who was talking, but said, if you think about, I think it was Tom, 15 years ago, what we had but we don't have now. And in 1993, the funding formula for schools changed. And from that point, things have gone, in some districts, it's been radical, and some it's been gentle, but it's changed. So, those folks aren't trying to push you off, but you're right, it's very frustrating. It's frustrating from this side of the fence also.
And I would argue that's why it's really important to go to the state
Right.
legislature, because that's where that money ultimately comes from. Instead of fighting amongst ourselves for all these programs, the more general money you can get into state education, the more that you can tell your representative that education is my number one priority, you know, the more that you can influence that, I mean, the better all of these different arenas will be.
But I would say that in Montana, we've got 3 bodies that are very important. The legislature, the city council, and the school board. And I don't think we ask the school board members the hard questions often enough. We don't have enough people qualified running for the school board. Great Falls has all-day kindergarten now. How do they do that? Now, I know they've got, I'm going to talk to Roberta, I know they have a couple other sources of money, but they've made a decision over there to have it now. And we have it in Missoula. So the school board makes some very important decisions that sometimes we forget.
What did you say the school board was?
Makes very important decisions.
That sometimes what?
We don't realize, or people don't think that they have the, what I would say, the real authority
Power,
and to be innovative that we think they do.
I guess I just kind of have a question, you know, like the point we brought up, you know, years ago we had this and now we don't have it. Well, I'm wondering, what exactly has caused, I mean, I'm sure that there are social issues and all that have caused it, but at one time we only had half-day kindergarten and it seemed to work. So what has brought up the issue that our community believes that we need full-time daycare, or full-time kindergarten?
Society's changed.
Talk about it.
I mean, that's the biggest thing.
Well, I understand
Yeah,
society's changed, but I mean, there has to be, I mean, is there like underlying purposes or a reason why we now think that full-time kindergarten is the answer?
Sure.
Well, early intervention, I guess, I mean, if you look at the statistics on the other end and the you know, if you look at what groups are struggling the most with achievement, it is the low socioeconomic groups, and so the earlier that you start to deal with that problem, I mean, I don't have the actual numbers, so I'm afraid I'm going to boggle it, but I mean, if a kid is not reading at grade level by, can someone help me?
The end of second grade.
Then they may never.
Catch up.
Thanks, I didn't want to.
They are at risk. There are very strong statistical numbers that go with that.
Well, let me ask you a question then. So, other than this lower socioeconomic status, how many kids are reading at second grade level at the end of second grade? With the half-day kindergarten as we speak?
Well, it probably would depend on school by school as you go, and actually.
But like 50%, 75%, 100%?
You know, I wouldn't want to throw a percentage out there because different places are going to be different.
Yeah.
But we know, the other piece is we know so much more now about how to teach reading, about early intervention, about how the brain works. So we get better and better every year on how to apply these interventions to kids to help get them to read. There's this kind of crucial benchmark that you need to be at a certain point to be successful. And there are a lot of researchers out there who have tracked kids beyond that. So you take that together with the literacy lacking environment from birth to age 4 or 5, and you see how big of a gap you come to school with. And you're trying to close that gap by the end of second grade. It's a challenge.
Well, there's a speaker that I heard about 5 years ago. He spoke about, if you looked at what schools did right after World War II, we didn't do driver's ed, we didn't do sex ed, we didn't do career ed, we didn't do health education, and all these things have been added. And then add the technology. But in essence, the school day and the school year has not changed a lot. So we have to be more efficient about that. And so I try to look at some of those things holistically, just because they are so complicated. And there are questions we like to talk about in the public discourse.
Yeah, Yeah, I would argue that because of the studies, and just reiterate what she said, it's enough to be considered. And if we can start with kindergarten-age children, we can do preventative measures to get them to read, to get them to be where they're supposed to be by second grade, third grade, so we don't have to continue and have them maybe be at risk in middle school or high school, where they're really at risk for dropping out, and then us really losing them. So if we don't start early, it's not going to happen sometimes. The statistics say that. So I really care about that personally.
So again, thank you for your time and for using dignity and respect. And again, we did this in order to get you to talk about why it's important, and then also, because as Tom Facey mentioned, a lot of times the folks are going to ask you, the senators and the House of Representatives folks are going to ask you questions, why, in order to sway their opinion. So it's really important. You don't have to know, case studies or whatever, but it's really important to be passionate about what you believe in, and then also to put some reasoning behind it also. Okay? So if you would, I would really appreciate it if you take a few minutes and fill out the purple sheet for me. That's the evaluation. And then Carol was going to take you over to the other room.